recovery for about 2 years now. And as I was getting sober, I found that I was no longer capable of finding and setting meaningful goals in life. And I don't know, there was just nothing that really compared to that ultimate goal of chemical bliss. And so but I was determined to stay sober, and so I started seeking a way to find, I don't know, to replace that goal. And so I began to seek out people who had more knowledge on the subject than me, and that's a very abridged version of how I came to be enrolled in a philosophy program here at RDC. And let me tell you, I had it all figured out. I would spend 4 years getting my Bachelor of Arts, and then another 3 getting my Master's, and another 3 getting my Doctor's, and then finally, I should have the tools that I needed to begin the search for the meaning of life. Well, the universe had other plans for me. In my first philosophy class here at RDC with Guillermo right here, I was assigned my first paper, and I hadn't been in school in 7 years or so, and I was a little bit out of touch and a little bit nervous. And the topic of the paper was, is life meaningful? Whoa. Now I had to do this paper that I figured I wouldn't have the tools to be able to breach the topic of for at least another 10 years. I set to the task with a particular anxiety, but in the writing of the paper, I discovered an answer to this question, which I presumed I would not breach for so long. I discovered the meaning of life. I use Albert Camus' The Myth of Sisyphus to support my claims, and Camus suggests that the only true philosophical question is whether or not to commit suicide. The myth of Sisyphus. Sisyphus is a man who was condemned by the gods to spend eternity pushing a huge boulder up a mountain. And when he got to the top of the mountain, he would step aside and the boulder would roll back down to the bottom, and he would have to walk down to the bottom of the mountain and get it and pick it back up again. The analogy is that the boulder being pushed is a person's journey through life, ups and downs with no apparent goal or par of height. Is Sisyphus a miserable man then, condemned as such? Camus concludes no, for the struggle alone of pushing that boulder up the hill is enough reason to go down and get it again. I have my paper here, and I'll show you what I wrote. Does life have a meaning? If so, what is it? I cannot presume to theorize on such a vast subject. I am, however, capable of theorizing the meaning of a single life, more particularly my own. What I can tell you about my life right here and now is that it does have purpose. I can prove that my life is meaningful due to the concepts of mastery and unity. As I mentioned before, I'm a recovering drug addict. I started doing drugs when I was quite young and fell in love with them. It started out harmlessly enough, and my life was manageable for many years. It wouldn't have been out of the ordinary for me to have eventually just stopped one day and started a family and picked up a normal job, as many of my associates from that era did. I, however, was in love. I progressed into heavy use of methamphetamine and barbiturates, and the people I then associated with were lifers, and many of them had 10 to 20 years under their belt, and although they often talked about quitting, you can only go so far before it's too late. I've always wanted to make a difference. When I played sports as a young lad, I annihilated my opponents, or I did all I could to do so at the very least. Many times after a match, the opponent would be left not only physically, but emotionally violated as well. I made sure to do so because I wanted to create experiences in other people's lives that would be difficult for them to forget. And so it was that I took to my addictions. I studied the workings of the streets and the philosophies of underground business, and I strived to excel, thinking I could make a difference. I excelled all right, straight down into the clutches of addiction. Without writing too much of an autobiography, one thing led to another, and I knew I had sunk too deep. I was deeper than many around me whom I knew would never come to surface even if they tried, but my stubbornness had me swimming like a madman for the shallows. I made it there, but not without help. I had many encounters along my perilous journey with masters that taught me the tools and tricks of the trade I would require if I desired to feel the warmth of the sun again. I encountered other addicts who had long-term sobriety, as well as psychologists, therapists, and counselors who'd never used drugs, but had studied the effects of them their entire life. I absorbed the teachings of them all entirely and took what they taught me and modified it to suit me more properly. Here I am now. I've escaped the treacherous depths of the ocean, and the last beads of salty water have long since evaporated from my skin. I'm now a master in one sense, having surmounted such an insurmountable toil. Although in another sense, I am but a child. I've lived my entire life amongst the drug subculture, and to now live without it is to know nothing of the world around me. I must learn to walk, talk, and think again, as though I never knew how to do these things in the first place. And as some of you may guess, I did not even dress myself this morning. I had to get my girlfriend to do that for me. If it were up to me, I was going to wear leather pants and a sweater vest. The concept of mastery is not to have mastered something or another, and it is not to be the best at something. The concept of mastery is to possess the tools and abilities to overcome, and to teach those tools to those without, to give back that which you have been given, and to complete the circle. I strive for this every day. I mentor young men who seek to accomplish the things I have accomplished, and I encourage and embolden them with new strengths, fresh perspectives, and hope to accomplish that which they have set out to do. I expect nothing in return, save that they too help those beneath them to rise up. Albert Camus speaks of a universe suddenly divested of illusions and lights, in which man feels alien, a stranger. When I was young, very young, the world was filled with bright lights and curious scents and interesting sounds. I was filled with wonder and awe, and I would fall asleep at night, imaginatively wondering what could possibly be the cause of such great and incredible things. As I grew older, I came to understand that the bright lights were focused electricity. The curious scents were food being cooked in other people's homes, and the interesting sounds would happen because some person somewhere was hurt or in trouble. All of my illusions and lights were stripped from my universe as I came to comprehend the simplicity of them. My peers were fascinated with these phenomena, yet I did not think they were so special anymore. It was as though I had been divorced from the natural order of things. As though my heart vainly sought the link that would connect it again. When drugs came along, they lit my world back up. Suddenly, I could experience things that had no explanation. There was no way to describe, or explain, or reverse engineer the occurrences of an ecstasy trip or an ether binge. Life was wonderful again, and I was again at one with nature. Absurdity stems from the juxtaposition of man desiring to know the meaning of the universe, with the universe providing no meaning to find. In recovery, we are faced with the absurdity of desiring to stay sober forever, juxtaposed with the unfathomable concept of forever. To combat this absurdity, recovering addicts are advised to take it one day at a time, one not need to think about tomorrow as it has yet to come along. This takes a huge amount of pressure off an addict struggling with an attempt to comprehend never getting high again. Instead, it allows one to think, I can get high whenever I want, just not today. In a similar fashion, I've divested my own curiosity of life's meaning, of life itself. I focus on the meaning of today. Does today have meaning? Yes, because I'm doing what I want to be doing. So just as staying sober for a day at a time can bring about a lifetime of sobriety, so too can finding meaning one day at a time bring about a meaningful life. And if anybody would like to ask some questions, you could feel free to do so.
Round of applause first. Good job, man. Good job.
We do have a couple minutes for questions, if anybody has a question.
So what did you learn this year in philosophy? What's one thing that's interesting for you?
In philosophy this year, we've been talking a lot about, I guess, the existence of God and the existence of the self. And I don't know, I think Guillermo says that if you come into a class and you leave it with more questions than you walked in, then he's done his job right. And I think that so far with the existence of God and the existence of the self, I had a pretty solid idea when I walked into philosophy, even in this fall. And now, at this point in the semester, I have more questions than ever.
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. This is a
very honest paper. I applaud your honesty. I applaud your writing style. I applaud the fact that you can connect theory, commute with your own personal life, and you learn something from it. That gives me, that's the best thrill that an instructor can ever get. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonder if when you were at Shunda Creek, you introduced me to a video called Finding Joe, and it talked in there about fighting the dragon, the inner battle. Could you speak to that a little bit, please?
Okay, I guess the dragon is something inside the mind of us all, and you don't have to be an addict to have a dragon. The dragon is just that voice inside your head that tells you, it tells you to do things before your morals and your realism, I guess, puts it in check, and it's sort of those basic desires. And so in recovery and in addiction, the dragon is clearly, it's telling us, you know, go out and use this and do that. And the dragon is tricky. He's a very sly dragon, and so he'll do things like justify, and he'll give you awesome reasons to go out and do things that are completely foolish things to do. And he knows, he lives in your mind, man. He knows how you think, and he knows what he needs to tell you to get you to do what he wants you to do. So I guess it's one thing we learned in Shunda, rehabilitation facility out by Nordegg, is to learn when the dragon is telling you things and when you're telling yourself things. And so that's, I guess, combating the dragon is to always keep yourself in check and always be thinking about what you're thinking about and considering. You always got to wonder what you don't know that you don't know, right? So I guess, yeah, you should always just be aware of, especially your own thoughts, and especially when you go through life with things like addiction or other similar ailments.
Thank you.
Great job, Cyril.
Thank you all.
Great job.
Excellent job. Excellent.
Thank you, Cyril. Were you able to determine whether or not Guillermo exists?
Pardon me?
Were you able to determine whether or not Guillermo exists?
Well, that's the truly philosophical question, second only to the question of suicide.